All right, everybody, we got so much art history and never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. We are still in chapter 29, and today we're going to go to Austria. Where is Austria on this map? Absolutely, C. All right, let's take a look at this map right here. Where is Austria? D is correct. Can we name the others? Can we name C? Spain, that's right. What is E? France. Yes, you should get that. What is A? Poland is correct. And what is B? Switzerland, yes. All right, so we're going to go to Austria, and in the northeast corner of Austria, we find the city of Vienna. And it is in Vienna that we find this guy right here, Adolf Hitler. The painting there on the left is a painting by Adolf Hitler. He was a painter, and experts estimate that there are only about 300 artworks by. For those of you listening to the recording, I've got a construction crew right outside the door with jackhammers and oh, yeah. All right. Let's see if this is going to be one of those challenging days of teaching. So, experts estimate that there are only about 300 artworks by Hitler. Some of his art has been sold at auction, but most of it has been seized by the United States government. Now, is his artwork good? All right, yeah, this is good stuff, right? It looks like, I think, what it's supposed to look like. Can you do this? Brooks says yes. So, he's not a bad artist, but the way he depicted figures in his artwork represented a profound lack of interest in people. Imagine that. All right, this building right here is the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. And as a child, Hitler wanted to become a professional artist. So when he was 17 years old, he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. And he took an entrance exam. That entrance exam had two parts to it. He passed the first part, which asked him to draw images from two scenes in the Bible within 3 hours. And he did that well. But it's the second part of the test where he failed the test. And this was, he had to show a portfolio of his artwork to the academy and for them to judge whether or not to allow him in. Now, I've shown you this work, this image before of people trying to get into the Royal Academy of Painting and Fine Arts. Basically, their opinion was, your work is good, but not really for us. Yeah, I think you'd be a lot better at architecture. Do you guys believe that? If you look at his paintings, this painting and this painting, I'm only showing you about two of them. All right, yeah, you can see that, right? He's good at painting architecture, and so he has an eye for detail. And they're going to come right through that door, aren't they? Oh, they're going away. All right. So the Institute considered that he had more talent in architecture than in painting. One of the instructors suggested that he apply for architecture school, but that would require more schooling. A Hitler art experts, yeah, they're just going to keep going. All right. What's funny though is when I record, like things that I think are really loud in the room don't show up in the recording. Like it records my voice, but it's not recording a lot of. But also when people are talking real quiet, it picks up that. So I don't know what the deal is with this. Maybe it'll pop up, maybe it won't. And it's also a good thing I recorded this same lecture earlier during third period. A Hitler art expert said this about the paintings that Hitler submitted to the Academy. He said, quote, "They are prosaic, utterly devoid of rhythm, color, feeling, or spiritual imagination. They are the architect's sketches, painful and precise draftsmanship, but nothing more. No wonder the Vienna professors told him to go to an architectural school and give up pure art as hopeless." And in another story, Years later, in 1939, before the outbreak of World War II, Hitler meets with the British ambassador and he says, quote, "I am an artist and not a politician. Once the Polish question is settled, I want to end my life as an artist." That's a total lie, right? So, yeah, here the critics say your art stinks, but you'd make a great architect, and everybody agrees. And he gets angry. All right, I've got a little bit of history for you. In the 1930s, two competing extreme ideologies were fighting for control of the world. One was communism over in Russia, and the other was National Socialism, or the Nazi Party, or fascism. In 1933, Hitler rises to power, and we're going to go to Spain and look at some of the events that are going on there. In Spain, there's an increasing polarization in the country. On the one hand, you have the disconnect between the rich and the poor. Both groups are drawn to extremist ideologies. The rich tend to be Catholic and nationalist, which tends to lean towards fascism. And the poor lean towards communism. So Spain becomes divided, becomes between the nationalists and the Republicans. And the Republicans are communist. But this is the Spanish Civil War. I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's so distracting to me. And tomorrow we'll just do the second part of this lecture. All right. So thus begins the Spanish Civil War. It is a proxy war. Do you know what a proxy war is? You ever heard that term before? A proxy war is a war between two people or two nations that are getting help from others. So really it's a war between the two bigger nations. In Vietnam, before we sent our troops there, we were helping one side, and the Soviet Union was helping the other side. So the guys that we were helping were fighting the guys that the Soviets were helping. That's a proxy war. All right. So the Nazis are helping the nationalists, and the Soviet Union is helping the Republicans in Spain. Right. There's not actual troops there. They're just helping them. All right, this gave an early look at the type of war to be waged on a global scale in just a few years later. The Germans gave weapons to the nationalists, especially planes, and German pilots were flying for the nationalists. They got experience flying and fighting. That's how the Germans were so good with their Luftwaffe aircraft at the beginning of the World War II. And they would use this experience in World War II, just like I said. At the beginning of the war, the Germans had the best air force because of this. All right, Picasso is the most famous painter of the time, and he's from Spain, and he's living in Paris. And the people of Spain are asking Picasso, can you please paint a portrait for our cause? And they're all asking please, and he says, no, I don't do politics. I'm just an artist. I don't paint. I just paint. I'm not interested in politics. All right. So we're going to look at a city in northern Spain called Guernica. Write down that name. And this city has this river to one side, and there's one bridge going over the river that is going to the city right here. So the communist-backed Republicans, this is their only escape route if they do a retreat. So the German bombers bomb the city while the soldiers are away. All the men have left the city. What's left over are women and children and old folks. And they timed this bombing. They bombed the city for 1 hour. It's not just flying by, dropping bombs, and then flying off. It's a flyby and a flyby and a flyby and a flyby. They absolutely decimate this city. And the attack was timed to maximize civilian casualties. 25 bombers dropped 100,000 pounds of bombs and incendiary devices on the village, and it killed 1/3 of the population. Carpet bombing towns was a tactic used by nationalists supported by the Germans. The specific targets, like bridges, often led to failed bombing attacks, so they just bombed the whole thing. So the rationale for hitting the villages and towns is they hold headquarters and reserves. That's why, like they say, it's an okay target. It's okay for us to bomb this whole town because somewhere in there, there's a headquarters. Right. But Guernica didn't have either one. It didn't have headquarters and it did not have any reserves in there. It was an actual peaceful town and it was absolutely devastated. This story was written about in the newspapers and on newsreels, and there was a complete outrage all over the world about what happened in Guernica. So Picasso decides to create an artwork to honor those at Guernica, and I do want you to know this artwork for the test. So he primed the canvas with reflective lead white paint, and he used regular house paint to paint over that. So these are photographs of the work in progress. And this work is a giant artwork. You can see the scale of the artwork in front of these people here. Now, what's one thing you notice about this artwork? Yes, it is very abstract. Right. And do you notice the colors of it? All right. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, it's values only. There's a total absence of color. And there's a reason for that. At the time, the only way that people get their news is from newsreels in the movie theaters. Like before the movie starts, there's a short newsreel that tells you the news of the day, right? So, you hear about the news on the radio, you can read it in the newspaper, but before you go to a movie, it has a news of the day. So, but it would be black and white because in the 1940s, everything was in black and white. The newspapers and magazines were in black and white. So, this is why he portrayed this in black and white. Now, the inspiration of Picasso's Guernica is an allegory of the effects of war by Rubens. And if you put these two paintings together, you can see the similarity. I took out the color of Rubens' painting so you can see a little bit more clear. So we have a weeping woman with a child in her arms, the flying fury of war holding a torch. We have a woman facing the heavens with outstretched hands. We have a woman holding her dead child. And here we have this is a reference to Pierre Paul Proudhon. And this is justice and divine intervention conquering crime, I think. This is the allegory of this one. But these hands that are raised is a reference to Francisco Goya. And if you look at the hands of the Francisco Goya, had that stigmata that I told you guys about, and you can see that stigmata in the hand of the Picasso painting. So there's no specific references to the actual bombing, but the intensity evokes the suffering of all wars. And the chaotic composition is to evoke the horror of war. And it's quite interesting. It has a very interesting composition. It has this strong triangle in the middle, and then it's divided up into quarters in the background. Picasso uses horses and bulls to signal life and death, and you can see the bull here. But the bull is also a reference to Francisco Franco. Let me just quickly go through my notes. The woman holding the child, her bare breast that once fed the child, but now the child is dead. The eyes are in the shapes of tears, and the bull represents the brutality and darkness, and it represents the coldness of fascism. And it represents Francisco Franco himself, the leader of the nationalists in Spain. We have a dead soldier at the bottom. This represents futility and hope. We have a severed arm that holds a broken sword of failure. And from the sword grows a white poppy, the symbol of remembrance and hope. And in the background, we have a dove, normally a sign of peace, but now it's dying. And then there's a light bulb, is the only piece of 20th century technology in the painting. But it looks like an eye. It represents the technology that destroyed Guernica. A screaming horse in the center is collapsing from this gaping wound. And the horse represents the people of Guernica. A woman is trapped in a burning building, pleading for God to help and pleading for the planes to stop. And the injured woman here holds an injured leg to stop the bleeding. And she's looking toward the candle, not the light bulb. And the candle is also hope. Both of these paintings are of Guernica, and both were exhibited at the same time in 1937. And Picasso's had he had a very mixed reaction. There was, people were still just getting used to avant-garde art, and Ferrer's painting on the right had a lot more fans. But the more the two paintings traveled around the world, the more famous and appreciated Picasso's became. So Francisco Franco and the fascist nationalists won the Spanish Civil War and took over Spain. Picasso refused to allow Guernica to be seen in Spain under the rule of Francisco Franco. So Guernica was sent around the world to different museums, and it raised money for refugees in Spain. Picasso died in 1973 and Franco died in 1975, and Guernica returned to Spain in 1975. There is a story of when the Nazis had taken over France, and Picasso was living in Paris at that time, and the citizens of France and Paris were often subject to stormtroopers or um, uh, Nazi officials coming in and searching for anything of contraband. And in Picasso's house, he had a photograph of Guernica, and the Nazi officer asked him, "You did this?" pointing to the painting. And Picasso said, "No, you did."